Sakazani, Timelang, Khanya, Lisedi. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the one-on-one sessions with Gaga Sora. And I'm your host, Gaga M, giving you guys tips, lessons, and teachings on everything spirituality. Okay, so today we're gonna be talking about spiritual stroke. And for those of you guys who watched my live the other day, I did mention that I want to touch up on certain spiritual illnesses. So this is me starting with this. So I want to talk about stroke name. So we all know what stroke is. We all know that people tend to have stroke. And one thing that people tend to not know is that sometimes stroke can be spiritual, right? So we will be touching up into that. But before we do that, I want us to fully understand what exactly is a stroke, right? So this is a health issue whereby blood flow to the brain is blocked or there is sudden bleeding in the brain, right? So it's actually a neural issue, right? And whereas is the case, this results in stiff muscles, paralysis, blood visions, balance disorder, and mental confusion. So sometimes you'd find that most of the people that have strokes, they can't really fend for themselves because their brain is damaged in that particular moment in time, and it causes a certain paralysis within the body. And this paralysis can be in one side of the body or the entire body, basically, right? And whereas only a part of their body works because the mind is still slightly active, even though it's not really active at all, right? So one of the major signs is blood vision. So this actually is very important because it's gonna be one of the biggest signs that I'm gonna talk about throughout this video. The blood vision, it's actually very good for you guys to actually take note of, right? And as much as stroke is a medical issue, in most cases there are some instances whereas it is a spiritual thing, right? And the spiritual matter of stroke is something that is very, I'll not say it's very rare, but in us African cultures or with us African people, there are instances whereas a person who has stroke, and with in most cases you'd find that it is a spiritual matter, and hence that is why I'm making this video today, right? I also noted down that a natural and spiritual stroke can be hard to differentiate, but there are some signs that can help you in doing so, and this is what we're going to be looking into, right? The different signs that could actually show you that something is a natural stroke or it is a spiritual stroke, right? But there are two types of spiritual strokes that we're going to look at. First of all, it's going to be ancestral stroke. This is a stroke whereas the ancestors have something to do with you having the stroke, and also a spiritual attack stroke. This is whereas muti is involved, and this muti is coming from people that are attacking you spiritually and bringing you the stroke to you. Yeah, something like that, right? So with the ancestral stroke, like I said, the stroke you encounter is a result of your ancestors being angry or they are punishing you. So most of the times we all know that ancestors are very strict, very gangster in a sense, and they tend to punish people a lot, right? And this is something that I've also had experience with, basically, right? Because I remember my first years of spiritually appeasing my ancestors, there was a time I even talked about it at some point, whereas I went to a place when I was not supposed to be in that particular place, like to actually evoke my spirits, which was my prophetic spirits at that time. And traditional ancestors were not happy, to a point whereas I literally had a minor stroke which left pains around my body for a while until I decided to reroute my entire life and do things the way that my ancestors want them to be done. So this is whereas the ancestors punish you themselves to ensure, because you are not doing things the right way, you are not appeasing them the right way, and you are making them angry. And there are a lot of things that can make the ancestors angry. Firstly, like what I did, I decided to go and start my spiritual journey without the proper guidance from my ancestors, which almost blocked some of my ancestors. So that was a punishment. While other people could be that they are not doing the traditional work the right way. For instance, you have a spiritual gift but you're not helping people in the right way, there are repercussions. Sometimes you'd find that if your ancestors are very, I won't say mean, but they're very strict, then you could actually find yourself encountering or having a stroke, right? Or in other cases, you're running away from your spiritual gift and your ancestors are very strict and very impatient, then you could actually find yourself having a stroke. But we will talk about the different signs that actually indicate that the stroke that you are having, or you are having symptoms that could actually lead you to an ancestral stroke, right? And a spiritual attack stroke is a result of muti sent by your enemies to bring suffering into your life due to jealousy and hatred. So we all know that at this point, anytime anyone attacks a person with muti, it is not really anything too personal. It's just hatred, jealousy, and anger, right? So most of the times people will bring you through this position, like will put you in a position where as you have a stroke, not because you did anything wrong with to them, but because they may be jealous and they don't want you progressing in the manner that you are supposed to, right? But we will be looking at the signs then. So I noted down that both of these conditions can be cured happily, but do note that ancestral stroke is harder to cure. And the reason why ancestral stroke is harder to cure is because it is not multi-related. It is your ancestors, it is your forefathers, it is the people in your bloodline that are actually doing this to you, right? And this is where, as the major way in which you cure this one would be to actually do things the right way and according to them. But I will go into details on other things that you can do to actually fix it, right? But with multi-related or traditional attack, spiritual attack type of stroke, this is where as there are different herbs and remedies that are actually catered, or rather created, for the main purpose of actually removing this muti and putting you back on your feet the way that you're supposed to, right? So it's very important to understand what now this, if you are encountering a stroke, if you had a stroke or someone you know has a stroke, it's very important to know what is the main cause of it. Was it ancestral? Was it spiritual, or was it natural? Because if it's natural, it is a bit harder to actually reverse the whole thing, even though it is possible, but it's not the same as when it's a spiritual attack type of stroke, right? So I want us to look at what compels our ancestors to do this to us. So going back into the ancestral stroke, we want to understand why our ancestors do that, because I gave you guys a brief, but here I wrote everything in details just to show you guys what could cause it, right? The first thing is having neglected your ancestors for too long. So you know you have a spiritual gift, you know that you have to appease your ancestors, and this is something that I sing about every single time, but you know that you have to appease your ancestors, but you're not doing that. You're taking too long. You are basically running away from your spiritual gift or your spiritual calling or your spiritual duties as a person, as one abadim, right? So by neglecting your ancestors and neglecting your spiritual work, this could result in them actually punishing you by giving you a stroke. So there are different ways in which they can punish you, but this is one of the major ways, right? It's similar to when they make you lose your mind or make you go crazy, because it's something that is very hard to reverse, but it is one of the things that can actually cause you to have an ancestral stroke. Number two, attempting to convert your ancestors that do not approve the conversion. So we talked about converting ancestors a lot. And one thing that I did mention throughout the time while I was talking and guiding you guys in terms of converting your ancestors is the fact that certain ancestors do not allow themselves to be converted into a prophetic ancestor, right? Because most of the times when people convert their ancestors, they're converting from traditional to prophetic work in their spiritual work, right? So certain ancestors do not agree with that. And the more you try to convert them, this is where as it comes through as though you are blocking those traditional ancestors, and as a result, this is where as they will punish you, and sometimes a stroke will be the way in which they choose to punish you at that point in time. Number three, recklessly using your gifts. So this is something that I cannot stress more. Like when you recklessly use your gift, especially when you have ancestors that are pure, ancestors that want you to do things right, ancestors that not like agree with you harming people as opposed to helping them as a healer, because you know a healer means you're helping people, not trying to kill people, you know. But it's basically whereas you are basically using your gift very recklessly and your ancestors are not approving of that. So what they will do is that they will punish you, right? That is why you find certain healers and gomas they're not in a good state, and you think to yourself, well, why is this person like this when they were actually appeasing their ancestors? And this is where as you find that this particular person, yes, they are spiritually gifted, they are very strong in their spiritual work, but they chose to actually work in a very dark manner as opposed to helping people the right way. Hence their ancestors decided to punish them by giving them this particular stroke. Okay. And the fourth reason, which is actually the last reason why you could actually encounter a stroke, is when your ancestors are fighting amongst themselves. So this is nothing new. I feel like at this point, we're all very accustomed to ancestors fighting over people. And this is where, as in this particular case, you'd find that two ancestors are pulling you in two different directions. And instead of joining your ancestors, you may choose a side, and that will upset the other ancestors to a point where as they will actually punish you by giving you a stroke. So this is something that is very avoidable, right? Whenever your ancestors are fighting over each other, it is a very avoidable situation, whereas instead of choosing a side, which is something that a lot of people do, that actually brings a lot of hardship in their life, it's actually best to actually balance out your spiritual work, right, to balance it out and decide to do everything for all these ancestors at the same time, as opposed to choosing a side to avoid this particular occurrence, right? So another thing I noted down is that initially the first stroke you experience is more of a warning, but failure to heed this warning will result in a more severe stroke. So this is only a result of when the ancestors are bringing a stroke to you, right? The first stroke is very minor. It's a very minor one. It's a warning, right? And this could even be something that happens in your dreams or your visions, where you are being shown that we will do this to you. And when you wake up in the morning, you feel like you actually did have the stroke. You had some sort of a seizure when you were sleeping, and it actually left remnants of pains around your body to actually show that your ancestors were giving you a warning. And usually in that particular case, this is where, as you don't just sit by and say, oh sheesh, I dodged a bullet. You actually go out and you try to see, what is it that I am doing wrong here, and how is it that I'm gonna fix it to ensure that I've not encountered this. Because like I said, sometimes a stroke can actually have a very long-term repercussions around your body. Yes, so as time goes on, if you do the proper therapeutic things, you could actually get back to normal, but it's very difficult to do that. So might as well prevent it as opposed to getting to cure it at the end of the day, right? But the first one is usually a warning, right? And this is where, as if you don't listen to the warning the first time, then the second time around it's actually going to be very massive and very severe, and other times it could even kill you as a person. So that is actually the downside of it, Jari. Sometimes it could be a punishment to say that we're just punishing you, you live your life like this, you'll suffer like this, while other times it's gonna be that thing, after this you are gone, basically, right? So how spiritual attack stroke is sent, right? That is also something that I want to look at. First of all, muti being buried in the gate or in the yard, right? So this is something that is used on a regular basis. So muti being buried in the yard or on the gate or right outside the gate is a very common trick that is used by a lot of people that use muti, right? And the downside is that it is done for different things, right? Not all muti that is buried on the entrance of your gate or in your yard is for stroke. Sometimes it could be for what we call sifulani. Other times could be to block the family, to tie the family. Like, it doesn't have any physical impact on the people's bodies, but rather it has an impact in the lives of this particular people, right? And lastly, the other time where it is done is whereas the more you step on this particular muti on the gate, the more the stroke actually becomes stronger. This is where, as you find yourself stepping into your yard, for instance, or any yard whatsoever, it could be your home or your house, whatever place, right? And every time you step through that gate, you have this unsettled feeling out. Your leg is becoming numb, your feet are becoming painful, and this pain often moves around the body all the way up to your neck. And when it gets to your neck, that's where you know what it's gonna be. Things are gonna be real, because your body will constantly feel numb on a regular basis. But the more you step on this muti, it is the more longer it's actually going to lead to this particular severe stroke, right? If the purpose of this muti is a stroke, like I said, there are multiple reasons why things are buried in the yard, and if the purpose is a stroke, then that is the main thing that you will feel. And the minute whereas the pain actually reaches your head, this is whereas you're gonna start having the stroke. So for a lot of people, the good thing, if you pay attention to your whereabouts, what you do, where you're stepping, how you feel when you enter a particular gate and whatnot, you'll be able to pinpoint and tell when you are stepping in an area that has muti, because you'll actually feel it instantly, right? Okay, some people feel it instantly, some don't, but not personally, I feel it instantly when muti is involved in a particular place on a particular thing, right? So the more you step on it, the stronger the muti becomes, and if you tend to neglect it, then it will cause severe sicknesses, or rather a stroke on your body, right? Number 2, muti on an object that you're given by hand. Okay, so this is actually the oldest trick in the book, whereas someone can literally just give you anything, right? It could be a clothing, it could be a table, it could be a chair, it could be a pen, right? It could be like something as small as a pen, it could be a book, it could be literally anything. It could also be money. Like, money is actually one of the major things that people tend to use when sending muti to a person, they would be like, take this money, and then you take it and automatically the muti starts working, right? So basically, when something is given to you by hand, by a person, the first hand that touches a particular object is the one that actually contracts the particular muti that is being placed on this particular object, and which can result in whatever purpose this person is sending it to you for, right? And like we're talking about in this particular case, it is a stroke, right? But there are other things more long, they can do it to just kill you, right? Because when, like, for some people, they'll use this muti or cause a stroke to a person, and the minute you touch it, the minute you're in contact with it, right, you don't necessarily get those issues whereas you encounter the pains, but they grow gradually over time. Sometimes they can move very fast, especially with an object. They tend to move very fast to a point whereas in a week's time you might find yourself encountering severe numbness on your body, and after the second week, that is whereas you might go, right? Or you might have this massive stroke that can leave you paralyzed, and the second time around you have this stroke, this is where as they end you, right? So it's very important to be very cautious about what it is that you take. That is why a lot of people, especially as spiritual people in this day and age, especially given the fact that it is the day and age whereas people are actually starting to practice more witchcraft than they did back in the past, at least from my perspective. Like, there are a lot of people that are just on a roll, right? So it's always important for you to be very cautious about what you take, what you touch, who you're with, and basically even who you touch, because people can actually put muti on their bodies, and the minute you touch them, that muti works on you in the way that it's not supposed to, right? So it's very important to take that into notice, right? Number 3 is rituals done on your clothes. So rituals done on your clothes can also be for a lot of things, but stroke is one of them. This is where as a person can actually take your clothing. It could be a shirt, pants, undergarments, whatever it is that you own, right? Something that you've already worn before, right? They don't necessarily even have to return this particular object for the main fact that you have worn it, you have had it on your body for a while, it has your flesh on it, your energy on it. Then this is where as this particular muti will actually do the job and actually they will be able to send this particular stroke using your particular attire. And sometimes people go to the extent whereas with this particular clothing, they can even bury it, they can even lock it up somewhere just to ensure that nothing can particularly break this particular curse that they're sending to you. This is something that is going to work whether you like it or not, right? But there's a way to prevent it regardless. Okay. Number 4 is phone calls. So there are people where longer you find that you're just chilling and you get a call, and most of the times these people do it with a private number, right? You get a phone call, a private number, you answer this call, no one is talking, or you just hear weird things, or this person says one thing, or they just have a conversation with you like normally, right? And the minute you are in this particular phone call, you may feel a bit weird. It usually comes with a headache or some sort of a migraine, right? And then once the phone call is ended, this is where as the migraines become worse, the headaches become worse, and they manifest into numbness and pains around your body, and these pains can also result into actually turning into a stroke, right? If the main purpose of it is to actually send you a stroke. This is when personally I would advise people that when you're receiving a call, especially when it's someone that you don't necessarily trust, you put your phone on loudspeaker and put it away. Don't put it on your ear, because by doing that, you're allowing the muti to actually have power, like most power. Or rather, don't take the call. Now, personally, I don't take calls from people that I don't trust. It came even to a point where as I even blocked numbers, I even changed my number to a number that a lot of people that I do not like or I do not trust cannot get me on, because I'm avoiding certain situations whereas I get spiritual attacks that are not necessary, right, at that particular point in time. So it's very important to pay attention who it is that is calling you, and whose calls you're accepting, and how you feel in the middle of any type of call, right? Paying attention to how you feel in every type of situation is actually going to guide you in knowing whether or not there's anything to worry about spiritually, right? Number 5 is voodoo dolls. So voodoo dolls are things that we see in movies most of the times, but they are real. This is whereas a doll can be made and your face can be put on that doll with a picture, or rather when that person makes that doll, they affirm that it is you, right? And this particular doll can be used to do a lot of things, to give you pains around your body. They stick needles on this thing. Like, there's just so many things that they do with voodoo dolls that can actually affect a person's life and their well-being, bring them sicknesses and whatnot. not, but stroke is actually one of the things that is often done with voodoo dolls as well, right? Number, is it 6? Yeah, number 6, the use of a healer's very own muti. So that is why as healers we always have to be very careful and very cautious with our herbs, right? So your own muti as a healer, as a sangoma, as a prophet, your own Bible as a prophet can be used against you to a point where as your very own things can be used to actually send strokes to you, can send sicknesses to you, blockages to you, you name it, right? There's instances where as people like ancestral people, prophetic people, sangomas, they even died from their muti or their spiritual things being in the possession of people that are going to use them against them with muti, right? So your own spiritual thing, that is why your spiritual things are very sacred. You don't leave them everywhere. You don't allow everyone to touch them, because your very own muti, your very own Bible, whatever it is that you use spiritually, can be used to actually bring sicknesses and strokes and whatnot to your body, okay? But with everything that I did say, I do want to emphasize one thing which is very important, right? Which is that this type of stroke can move very slow or very fast depending on the muti and intent of the people who sent it, right? The longer the muti is in your body, the more severe the results in the case, whereas it can lead to death, right? So it's the same as like things like the fulan, like they usually move very slow around the body, but the longer they stay in your body, the more severe they become, to a point where, as for example, Fulani can actually result in amputation, which is not nice, because the minute you're amputated, it keeps moving, it becomes stronger, right? And the same thing applies with things like Sejisha, I did speak about as well. The longer it's in your body, the stronger it becomes, and the more severe the results are going to end up being. And with the stroke, the downside is it can actually lead to death, as opposed to just you suffering, basically, right? So here are symptoms of a spiritual attack stroke, right? First of all, muscle discomfort on the side of the body prior to occurrence, right? So prior to you actually encountering this particular stroke, you will feel like uncomfortable on your muscles. Your muscle will constantly feel stiff at night when you're sleeping. They'll actually feel very numb, very cold. They'll just feel very uncomfortable, right? Number 2, a fever. I know this is actually a very uncommon symptom, but it is something that you could experience. It's a very serious fever while the muti is still like building up around your body, and after that, that is where as the stroke starts moving, and you think to yourself, oh no, I'm good, I just had a mild fever, but it was actually that, right? Number 3, body numbness that comes and goes. So the numbness sometimes can come and it can go like constantly, right? Over and over again, whereas you just think to yourself, no, it's just how my body is. But in reality, is this particular muti working around your body, right? Number 4, losing vision gradually. So this is where as a lot of people actually confuse it as a sign of a spiritual gift or just a minor side issue, right? But you'll find yourself losing vision. Like sometimes your vision is good, but other times your vision can become very, very blurry, right? Number 5, severe pain on your hand or foot that the muti is on, right? So the specific part of the body, like for instance, I said, or someone can give you something with your hand, right? So this particular hand will actually experience pains on a regular basis. Like these pains can be very mild to very severe, right? But most of the times it's a very severe pain, like a sharp pain, as if needles are being are being stuck on your body, right? So that is also something, right? Number 6, it's migraines. So migraines are one of the biggest signs. The minute you have migraines, just know that whatever muti it is has already reached your upper body, and this is where as you're very close to actually experiencing the entire migraine, right? Number 7, ears being blocked, deafness that comes and goes. So one minute your ears are good, the next minute you find it very difficult to hear, right? So pay attention to how your ears are, especially once you've actually touched something and you feel discomfort and now your body's getting numb. The ears will also be a telltale. It will be a telltale for you, right? Number 8, premature stroke scares. This is whereas you find yourself having minor strokes, but they're not as severe, right? And this is where as you even go to the hospital, they don't see anything, but these strokes keep coming. They are minor at first, but over a time, this muti becomes stronger, then it will actually end up being a very severe one, right? And lastly is neck pain and stiffness. You know when your neck is just so painful, like it's so stiff, like you just always wanna like, you know, I don't know how to name it, but like you want to do some acupuncture on your body just to get the pain to go away, but it just keeps getting stiff and numb and painful. That is also a very like straightforward sign that you might be experiencing minor stroke symptoms from a spiritual attack, right? So here are also symptoms for ancestral stroke. First of all, warnings from other healers. So usually with healers, we can actually tell when someone is about to have that. You could be consulting and it can actually show up, or you could be just working and someone will feel that, okay, this person is not okay. Then the minute they feel it, they will warn you, right? That's what happens. We healers see things and we warn you, and you don't take us seriously, it's fine. Number two, dreaming of getting bitten by a snake leading to good discomfort in that particular area. So when you have dreams whereas there's a snake and it's not happy, just know that you need to do something right by your ancestors. And the longer you take, then that is whereas you might encounter something that isn't good, and a stroke could be one of it if you get bitten by a snake. So if you get bitten by the snake in your dream, then you'll wake up with this feeling of discomfort on this particular area that the snake bit you in the dream, because it was happening in the spiritual realm, right? So this is a sign out you might be close to encountering a stroke, right? Number three, just like the same as with spiritual attacks, minor stroke scares. Like I said, usually with the ancestors, they give you the first stroke as a warning, like a minor stroke as a warning. And if you don't listen to those warnings, you don't pay attention to that, then it's going to be something serious next time, right? Number four, inability to concentrate. And lastly, blindness, right? Minor blindness, whereas your vision comes and goes the same as it does with the spiritual attack stroke. And lastly, I want us to look at how it is that you can actually prevent this, right? So in terms of preventing it, I did like differentiate them, like separate them. So with ancestral attack stroke, soaking your body in coarse salt is actually going to be the one thing that you should do on a regular basis. It doesn't remove it, but it stops it from moving faster in your body. And the more you do it, you'll just find yourself feeling a lot more relief on that particular area while you prepare yourself for the next ritual to actually remove the stroke. Number two, avoid medical doctors. I know that doctors are good and the only way to avoid them is like you take an apple a day, but when it comes to spiritual things, the more you use medical things, medicine, Western medicine, the faster the moves around your body. So it's actually very best to actually avoid it unless you are very certain that it's not spiritually related, right? Or it's not a spiritual attack in any whatsoever. Number three, go through necessary rituals on your body, right? So the minute you're aware of the fact that you are experiencing symptoms, or rather someone has already confirmed with you that you are encountering, you're going to have a stroke, it's important for you to go through the necessary rituals on your body to ensure that you stop it, because until you stop it, this will continue to happen. You will still end up getting this stroke regardless, right? Number four, remove and get rid of the source of this muti, right? So when I'm talking about the source of this muti, I'm taking the basis that there is something that you were given that had this muti, or you slept on something that had this muti. You need to remove this particular object from your life, from your home. You burn this thing, you cast it away, right? In the process of actually going through the necessary procedures to actually remove whatever muti in your body, you make sure that you do the necessary things to actually remove the object that was used to actually send you this particular spiritual attack, right? And number five, you do a back to sender ritual. So a back to sender ritual is very important in the basis that when you do it, automatically this muti has to go back to an ascendant, because when you do rituals to remove certain things, they automatically need to go somewhere. Muti is energy, right? Spiritual attacks are energy. Energy doesn't just disappear, it needs to go somewhere. And it's always best to send it back to whoever sent it. That way you never get bothered by it again. The downside of it is that the person who sent it will actually experience the same thing, but who cares? Like, they want to do it to you, so who cares? And lastly, with how to prevent early or how to cure ancestral stroke, I have four things that I can advise you with. The first one is to partner and ask for forgiveness. If you've done something that you are very much aware of that you were not supposed to do, or that I upset your ancestors, ask for forgiveness and do things right by your ancestors. And the minute you do that, then they'll most likely take a step back, because most ancestors are very understanding and they reciprocate to to you as Manabadimi, as the person they choose to bear the gift, because it's a heavy burden to take, and sometimes you won't get it right whenever you want to. You're gonna get it wrong here and there, and it's normal, it's understandable, right? Number 2, begin appeasing your ancestors as requested, right? You can ask for forgiveness, but if you don't do things the right way, if you don't appease your ancestors, if you don't do what they asked of you, then automatically you're going to go back to square one. So appeasing your ancestors is very, very important, right? Number 3, stop doing what triggers your ancestors. So you might find that your ancestors are punishing you because maybe you drink too much, maybe you party too much, you don't give enough time to your ancestors and your ancestral work. So that means that at this particular point in time, it's very important for you to actually try and notice what it is that is triggering your ancestors and work on stopping it to make sure that you don't encounter anything bad. Because the thing about the ancestors is that you can appease them, you can ask for forgiveness, but if you continue the same habits that they're against, then you will still get the repercussions from like that you are trying to avoid to begin with, right? And lastly, initiate. It's straight to the point. Initiate. Like, some people are actually encountering strokes not because they are doing anything wrong, but because they are delaying their spiritual path, right? So by just going ahead and doing what you're supposed to do, one thing I always tell people, initiating doesn't change your life. You can still go on and live your life the way that you want to, have fun, enjoy it. Nothing changes, right? So just go ahead and appease your ancestors, initiate, then you're good. You won't encounter any of this drama, any of these punishments. You won't encounter them, as long as after initiating you still do right by your ancestors when need be. Then you can continue with your life. Anyways, guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I try to make it as short as possible, but yeah, I hope it was detailed enough for you guys to understand this. And if you do find yourself having symptoms of a spiritual stroke, please do not just sit with it. The longer it's in your body, the stronger it becomes, and the more severe the repercussions. And this applies to all other spiritual sicknesses and attacks. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me. Have yourselves a beautiful one. Thokozani. Bye bye.